I don't have too much time today, so rather than continuing thinking about lines and shapes and such, I wanted to get back to what I'd been thinking about earlier, coming up with a more standard way to do proofs and things. In particular, something that I think will be useful is to have a way to refer to specific things that I've proven or definitions that I've made for quick reference. This is the side benefit of making it easy to tell what things I've proven depend on what other things, which means that if I've made a mistake, it'll be easy to tell what I have to fix. To start with, here are my 3 rules that I'm using to define how numbers work. Since these rules are all part of the definition for numbers, maybe I could refer to them as dn1, dn2, and dn3. Or maybe I should start with dn0? I could also go the route of making them more descriptive, something like dn0 for the rule that defines 0, dna for the rule about numbers coming after other numbers, maybe dnu for the rule saying numbers are uniquely defined. That would make it easier to tell what the rules refer to, but also a bit harder to keep track of. Maybe as a compromise, I'll have a proper descriptive name for each of these, and some kind of index I use to track them that I can use for shorthand where it makes sense to. I'll keep a master list connecting all the shorthands to the proper names, so if I forget which is which, I can always look it up. I do still feel like I should distinguish between things that are definitions versus things that are statements I've proven using definitions. I should have a name for those. I'll call them theorems. I'm less sure about this, but I also feel like I might want to distinguish definitions and theorems based on what type of math they involve. I only really have proper definitions and such involving numbers at the moment, but if I get to the point where I can start proving things about shapes and lines, it feels to me like those will sort of be off to the side, part of a different system than all the stuff about numbers and counting. Putting this all together, I think I'll give each statement a code with a 2-letter prefix followed by a number. For stuff to do with numbers and counting, I'll use the prefix C, followed by D for definitions and T for theorems. After the prefix will be a number, which will just be an index I use to keep track of it in the list. So the first part of the definition of numbers would be CD0, then CD1, and so on. And then the first statement I prove about numbers would be CT0, the next CT1, and so on. Compiling the work I've done so far with numbers, a partial list of my definitions and theorems could look something like this. There's one thing that still bothers me. With this labeling scheme, the 3 parts to the definition of numbers are CD0, CD1, and CD2, while the definition of addition is CD3 and CD4. It would be nice if there were some way to have these labels grouped together, so I could know that the first 3 of them are all talking about the same thing. I could add another letter, or another number if I was worried about running out of letters, but I think the better idea might be to do something like this. I can say that the definition for numbers is the first counting-related definition I have, and that it's made up of 3 parts. If I did have a statement that wasn't closely enough related to anything else to warrant grouping up with it, I could just leave off the second number, and that wouldn't cause any conflicts. I'm liking the look of this a bit better. It's a little more complicated, but I think it's still simple enough that it should be good to use as a quick reference. Now let's see about using it. My first definitions are the definition of numbers, and the definition of numbers being more or less than other numbers. For the definition of numbers, I'll just say that the first rule is the definition of 0, or the 0 rule. And then the next one is the definition of following, or the following rule. And finally, the condition of uniqueness, or the unique rule. The definitions of more than and less than I can just call that. This should be enough to start trying to prove things. Let's say I want to prove that 0 is less than every other number, which is to say it's not more than any other number. From the definition of more than, which is CD 1.0, 0 is more than another number exactly when it either comes after that number or comes after another number more than that number. 0 doesn't follow any other number, which I know by combining the rules defining numbers. Every number is defined either as 0 or as the number after another number. And each number is uniquely defined, so 0 can't also be after any other number. Since 0 doesn't come after any other number, there isn't any number 0 can be more than. Looking at this proof, some things are sticking out to me. Nothing that makes me think it's incorrect or anything, but I feel like there's still more going on here than I realize yet. Just a hunch. Let me try writing it out in terms of the shorthand I've come up with. Okay, now I think I have a better idea of what was bothering me. This proof sort of has 3 parts to it. If I wanted to put it simply, I could say a number greater than a number is after another number. And 0 isn't after another number. And finally, 0 isn't greater than a number. In the proof, as written, I ended up expressing each of these parts in different ways. A number greater than a number is after another number, is a less specific version of the definition of more than. 0 isn't after another number, is a combination of 3 other statements. And 0 isn't greater than a number is just a statement on its own, the theorem I'm trying to prove here. Do I need to introduce other, I guess, sub-theorems here to make this all consistent? I'm thinking I can at least leave the first part alone. Whether I'm saying a number more than a number has to be after some other number, or a number more than a number has to be after some specific type of other number, nothing about the proof actually changes. I'm not sure about the second part, though. Should I make another theorem that specifically says 0 is not after any other number? Taking a step back, I think there isn't necessarily a strictly right answer here. I'm cataloging these statements both to have an easily accessible reference for all the things I've proven, and to make it easy to tell which things depend on other things. How many things I need to be theorems versus just things that I can prove when they come up again is really just a matter of how granular I want to get. Do I want a really long list of theorems that very rarely come up? Or do I want to have a shorter list of theorems, but have to make longer proofs, sometimes repeating work I've done before? One more idea is coming to me. Maybe I could have a third type of statement, one that's kind of a subcategory of theorem, called a property. I could say that the number 0 has the property that it isn't after any other number, and tie that statement to the definition of 0 in some way. I'm not sure if this is a good idea or not. It sort of addresses the problem in this case, but I would imagine that there's lots of times that it doesn't help or even makes things worse. Maybe the thing to do is to have a look at all the statements that I'm working with, definitions, theorems, properties, or whatever, and see what looks to be more convenient for the actual data I have rather than trying to figure it all out in the abstract.